Hey everybody, this is Josh Runquist here for the Heavy Debriefings podcast, along with...
The Metal Faerie.
And we're already 8 episodes into the show.
Yeah.
And I can't believe this, 4/5 of the way into 10 episodes.
Crazy.
Yeah, trying to keep the spirit a little alive and well right now, as, of course, as you know by now, as long as we've been doing the show,
Yes.
we're going to be starting some things off with some disappointing news, then we're going to be getting into some more debatable stuff that's going to be going on. Of course, I'll be showing the Metal Faerie 3 random songs. She'll be hitting me up with a What's Your Problem? We'll be talking about our him-ha feeling behind AEW All Out.
Yes.
And some more stuff that I don't want to give away unless you look at the timestamps.
Exactly.
So, why don't you start this one off?
Yeah, so, I mean, like you alluded to, it wouldn't be the Heavy Debriefings podcast unless we bring the heavy. So, let's start out with some sad news. There were a couple celebrity losses this week. First up, Mr. Margaritaville himself, Jimmy Buffett.
Mr. Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Yes.
Jimmy Buffett.
Yes. Did he ever find his lost shaker of salt? I'd like to think so. I mean...
Or did he find it in heaven?
Maybe. But either way, it's obviously very sad that he is no longer with us. I know he was enjoyed by many, many people around the world, so super sad with that. And then...
I had to, back in my cover band days, I had to cover Margaritaville
Did you?
ad nauseum.
That's hilarious. I can't see you doing that.
Yeah, and then, I don't know if this is part of the Jimmy Buffett live experience or something like that.
Yeah.
But there was always, like, this part during the chorus, like, where in the hell is my goddamn salt? That we added.
I've never heard of that.
But I've heard of other bands doing the exact same thing.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
I don't really understand that, but yeah, it was like always during the last chorus.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever seen a cover band do that song, so I've kind of avoided that, so I'll take your word for it. And then up next, we just heard earlier today that Steve Harwell from Smash Mouth passed away. And we did hear just yesterday that he had gone into hospice. He's been having some health issues for a while now, liver failure due to that. And unfortunately, it sounds like he lost his battle today, so...
Yeah, and not just unfortunately liver damage, but unfortunately due to excessive alcoholism.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, can be something that leads to liver damage and liver failure.
Right.
My brother was someone who also drank heavily, a part of many of the problems that he experienced.
Yeah.
And I know they talked about how during his whole system failure, that he was having liver damage and kidney failure and all these different things that were going along with it.
Yeah.
And while I can't say either of us are Smash Mouth fans,
No.
and also I'm not a fan of the way that Mr. Harwell conducted himself when it comes to his alcoholism or any of his other beliefs in life.
Yeah.
It is very sad for everyone that's ever enjoyed his music. It's sad for friends and family.
Absolutely.
And it's also just a reminder that if you feel like that you're having a problem with any kind of substance, or if you know, just like a rounding thing that we always talk about here, maybe it's a mental thing that you're going through as well too. You know, there's no shame in asking for help.
Not at all.
You don't always have to suffer alone.
Absolutely.
And, you know, if for any reason you feel like that you're hurting others by your actions, or if anyone comes to you with an intervention, or sometimes you just need to talk to someone one-on-one and just be able to shoot the crap with each other and just be able to get through the day. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Oh, just to share one kind of happier note on Steve Harwell, I remember back in the day, I don't know how many of you watched The Surreal Life back in the day, but he was on one season. I remember he was on there with CeCe DeVille from Poison, who I love Poison, along with Tawny Katane, Sherman Hemsley, Florence Henderson was on that season, and I can't remember who else, but it was pretty funny.
Do you remember what season that was? Was that like 2 or 3?
I'm
I know
not
it wasn't 1.
No,
one is iconic.
It was at least a few seasons in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always remember All-Star being played all the time.
Yeah.
And to bring things back to my brother, because he loved trying to fit in, he bought the Smash Mouth album, Astral Lounge, which is the one with all of their hits on it.
course.
Outside of the covers, because that's how they finished off the other part of their popularity was doing a lot of covers, especially for the Shrek
Yeah, I was going to say,
soundtracks.
especially for Shrek. So, and Shrek is a cute movie, so.
The first one.
Yeah, that's the only one I've seen, so. But obviously some sad news for the week, but moving on from that.
Yes, hopefully the rest of this won't be as much death, but I do feel like things might be going into a different direction for the show.
Yes. Yeah, so with it being September now, we are taking advantage of the almost fall season. All of September and October, we will be having some Halloween content on every single episode, because I love Halloween and I want to share that love with everybody who listens.
Yes, almost every topic here is curated by the Metal Faerie herself, and I'm along for the ride. Even though I enjoy horror, I will never be the horror
Oreo.
Yeah, can you take that many different directions? I will never be the horror aficionado that the Metal Faerie is, and
That
hopefully
is true.
over the month and change, we'll be able to explore all the different ways that we show off your horror knowledge talent.
Yeah, so along that lines, we're going to start off with a little what's your problem, and this time you're on the hot seat, and it's horror movie.
Ow!
I know, is it burning you?
Yeah, it's starting to.
Ooh, so it's horror movie related.
Yes, it is, from what I understand.
So if you don't know Josh very well and his kind of feelings towards different types of horror movie antics, he is not a big fan of the jump scares. So I gotta ask you, what's your problem? Why don't you like jump scares?
I think they're the laziest way to get a heightened feeling out of someone. It's the cheapest scare that you have. It's the pun or the alliteration joke of horror movies, in my opinion, where anyone does it. And, just to do a little Freddy foreshadow for something I'll be talking about later, let's take Phil Brooks, who happened to star in his own horror movie.
Phil Brooks. Who's Phil Brooks again?
CM Punk.
Okay, for the wrestling fans, CM Punk.
Yes, who starred in his own horror movie. A lot of people will say a lot of things like CM ripoff or CM hunk or other things that we can't really say without being demonetized.
Magnet Punk.
Yeah, it is Chip Magnet Punk, but it's just like when they're trying to talk trash about him, they just use his name to talk trash.
Sure.
That is how I feel about the jump scare. It is just so easy, so lazy, and so overused.
But if it's effective, does it really matter?
How effective is it really?
I think it's pretty darn effective. People jump in movies and jump scares all the time.
No, they're startled. That's not scared.
Well,
It's not the same emotion. It's not the same feeling.
it can be for some people, first
South
of all.
Park did an excellent expose on the difference between being scared and startled in the episode where they have all the giant hamsters take South Park. I'm not sure if you've seen that one.
I can't remember.
Randy has a camcorder and he just keeps talking about how he's not scared, how he's just so startled from all of the jump scares of hamsters take her.
So, first thing I will say is they can be the same for some people. I think startling somebody puts them in a situation where they're more easy to scare because you're putting their nerves on edge. And if your nerves are on edge and your feelings are kind of all over the place, you're going to get scared a lot. So it kind of sets them up for that kind of stuff. I can see you're wanting to say something.
Yes, and I guess it depends on the situation as well, like what
Yeah.
the story is. Is it a slasher film? Yeah, jump scares can be effective in that way.
Okay.
But if it's a movie that's about characters and what they're actually going through and they're actually trying to tell like a real story that's going on and not trying to scare us, I feel like the jump scare is just so overused, so contrived, and so overdone.
What do you mean not trying to scare us? It wouldn't be a scary movie then.
No, like you're watching the character go through horror, not necessarily us.
Okay.
And I do feel like there is a difference because there's some movies that are meant to scare us. Some are meant to watch the horrors that someone else is going through.
I guess I don't see many of those movies with jump scares them.
It happens.
Okay, well, you'll have to...
And also, the other problem that goes along with it, while it jumped my mind, is the fake jump scare.
Meaning?
Oh, like a friend or a family member, like, boo, thing, and then they have the orchestral strings going on there. It's like, don't do that. You startled me. You scared me. And then it happens later in the movie. It's so predictable that it's going to come up again.
Sure.
That takes away from any amount of fear or scare tactics that are used to try to make me scared of watching the movie.
For you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
which is the problem, what's my problem.
Your personal problem. But I mean, you've always kind of been vocal about them, kind of against them in general.
Yeah, because they're so
they-
overdone.
Sure, but if they do work for other people, then, I mean, they're still doing their job of scaring people. And then let me preface this by saying I don't get scared by movies really at all, whether jump scares or other type scares.
There's been plenty of times we went to the movie theater and you're gripping my hand pretty hard.
I'm just trying to be cute.
Oh, yeah, you say that on the air, but when we're there...
You know I don't actually get scared. But if it works for other people, if it gets people into the right state where they can get even more scared, then I think it's doing their job, you know? Is it overused? Sure. Is it easy? Sure. I'm not saying it's like the ideal type of scare, but if it still does its job.
In words of Prophet Vincent, don't go away mad, just go away. That's how I feel about jumps. And you don't even need to go away completely either.
That was a deep hole right there.
Well, it's because I want them to go away and then come back. You can't, like we talked about in wrestling, and boy, this will be coming up later.
Sure.
You can't miss something that doesn't go away.
Okay.
If you're expecting jump scares in every single movie, how effective is it? It becomes less effective if you're expecting jump scares in every movie that you see.
I mean, I guess
and when it's so overdone, you expect that.
I don't. I mean, it might happen, but I don't go in with like those kind of expectations. I just think you're an overthinker, so you do go into
One overthinker to another. I guess we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that one. But what about you, folks? What about you? Do you like a good jump scare? Do you think that they're overdone?
They have a time and place for others, but isn't it maybe not for you?
Let us know in the comments down below.
Exactly.
And in speaking of things hopefully not overstaying its welcome, we're going to be doing my favorite part of the show, which is my musical roulette for the Metal Faerie. Where, if you're checking this out for the first time, I pick out 3 completely random songs, and I want to hear the reaction of the Metal Faerie, because either she loves it or she really hates it. And a lot of times I've been noticing over the years, she also goes like, "Nah, it's fine."
Meh.
But you'll never know unless she hears it. And just to switch things up from what we normally do, we picked out a song that I haven't even heard before yet. Completely missed this album completely and fully from Nita Strauss, someone that I've interviewed in the past, to not really raving reviews. A lot of people miss that interview, but I digress, as Taz would say. It is a new song called The Golden Trail, featuring Anders Frieden of In Flames fame. Now, first of all, what is your opinion on Nita Strauss?
I mean, honestly, I don't really have much of an opinion. I know she plays with Alice Cooper.
And Demi Lovato.
Yeah, yes, sorry. I can't forget Demi, of course. And that's about it. Like, I mean, I've heard pieces from her, but I've never really been, intrigued or pulled to listen to her any further than that, so.
Well, fair enough. Well, what did you think of The Golden Trail?
So the verses very much felt like she tried to write an In Flames song.
Well, when you have the singer of In Flames, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes and no. I mean, I get you want something to like be appropriate for his voice, but at the same time, I mean, do you, what music are you making? Don't try to make other people's music. And then as far as the chorus, it was just kind of very generic, radio friendly, but with a little bit of a kind of a genty beat to it sometimes, and just not really my thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm not saying, some people out there won't enjoy it, but it's not my thing.
Yeah, I was really kind of thrown off by this song in particular. Like, I don't mind the In Flames influence because I kind of feel like, considering the track list on this album, I imagine that everyone that she pulled in for vocals is a song that's kind of inspired by the band.
Yeah.
And that might be the point.
That could be.
The choruses really threw me off because Anders does not have the voice
no.
for the notes that Nita's playing.
No.
Especially when it came to that last chorus and the key change.
Yeah.
It's like he almost tried to hit some falsetto that Anders is just not capable of.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I thought that key change was really unexpected at the end of the song.
I don't know about that. I kind of find keychains to be the most anticipated kind of overdone thing in music. It's like, it's going to happen,
Hey-oh.
Going back to our previous conversation, if you didn't catch on to that. But I will say one other thing, like for a guitar player's album, I felt like the guitar was lacking. I mean, where was the guitar solo? Where was the I don't know, like super memorable guitar part. Like it was just kind of background noise.
Yeah, that is one way to look at it. And to be fair, we haven't listened to the album. I mean,
Yeah, no, this is solely off the one song.
Yeah, and it came out completely random as well too.
Yes.
So yeah, I can't talk about the rest of the album, but for this song, like, I get the In Flames worship, and, you know, good on you for doing that, but I don't think it's a song I'm going to be going back to.
Yeah.
Next up here, in a completely different direction, we have my so-called life star, Jared Leto, and his band 30 Seconds to Mars.
Yes.
With probably my favorite 30 Seconds to Mars song. I know that's debatable for some people, especially for those who hate Jared Leto completely.
Yeah.
But it is the song Attack, the first song off the album A Beautiful Lie. Now, how far back do you go with Jared Leto?
Oh my god, I love Jordan Catalano. Oh, he's been a dreamboat since I was a teenager.
Is he still a dreamboat in your eyes?
He is. Oh, and Morbius. Oh, girl.
Even with the sex cults that he has in real life, and
You know what? Do you? But no, I've been a big fan of Jared Leto since I was a younger lady myself, and mainly his acting career. I think he's an amazing actor. So if you don't like his acting, I don't care. That's on you, your loss. He's an amazing actor. As far as his musical career, I loved this album back in the day, and I still love this album. I haven't really followed up with 30 Seconds to Mars since that or before that, but I do love this album.
Well, I've shown you songs since then,
Yeah.
and they've all been wretched. Like, this is the last rock, almost metal album that they did. They went into the real indie pop, indie rock style after this album, and
Yeah.
they did the In Flames thing where they're using children's choirs all the time, and just like it's god awful. I will say, even as much as I love my satanic black metal and brutal death metal,
Yes.
I love the first two 30 Seconds to Mars albums.
Yes.
And I will actually be controversial in this household and say that the debut album is better than A Beautiful Lie.
Okay.
It's more metal, it's heavier,
Yeah.
and I feel like the songs aren't it's more unexpected and more futuristic, whereas this album is a lot more mainstream, which of course is the point. I mean, look what happened because of this album.
Yeah.
I can't blame them for doing that, and there's some amazing songs off this album as well too.
Yeah.
I don't even have a problem with Bury Me. Like,
No.
I think it's a great song, and I used to cover it when I was playing at home and just playing along with the radio all the time. I used to play that song all the time.
You mean The Kill?
Well, it's The Kill, and then in parentheses, Bury Me.
Yes.
You can't catch me on that one. I know this song all too well. But no, Attack. I think it's the best song off A Beautiful Lie.
It is a great song. Yeah.
Probably the heaviest song. They start off with the heaviest song, which is a very strange way to go about a album that's supposed to get the modern rock route. But yeah, I've always enjoyed the album. I enjoyed the first two albums, and I wish they would have kept going in that route before Jared Leto decided to get into cults.
What do you think about his acting?
I haven't seen enough of his work to hate him.
You've seen Morbius. You've seen Requiem for a Dream.
Yes.
You've seen Suicide Squad.
Sure have.
Besides Suicide Squad, how do you feel about
I
the
will
movies
actually
you've seen?
defend the 2016 Suicide Squad Jared
Yeah.
Leto Joker by saying that they cut out so much of what he did
Yeah.
that we don't really know if he sucked or not.
Yeah.
The edit of the movie sucks.
Yeah, well,
the movie sucks.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, you can't blame a bad movie on the actors.
No, you can't.
So I think a lot of people just kind of have it in their mind that they can blame people for whatever they don't like, and this is not it.
Yeah.
Get over yourselves.
And the movies that I have seen that he has been in, I have enjoyed. Even if I do have to go, it's Morbin time once in a while with Morbius. But if you've seen Requiem for a Dream and you think Jared Leto sucks, I don't know what you're looking for in a movie.
You do not know what good acting is. That is an amazing movie. Heartbreaking, but it is an amazing movie.
Oh, don't worry. Well, sometime probably next year, because,
Yeah.
after Halloween's done, we'll be getting into the holidays and stuff. But,
Yeah.
things could change.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking about, like, our top 10 movies that make us cry, or just
Oh,
our top
yeah.
10 movies in general, whatever
Absolutely.
the case is. But,
yes.
if just give the first two 30 Seconds to Mars albums a chance.
Yeah.
And I recommend you actually going back and checking out the debut album.
Yes, I will.
And third is another little softball for you, but it is a band that I want to talk about because it's a band not enough people talk about.
Yes.
It's a band that you actually showed me back in our early days of going together, and
I teach you things once in a while, too.
I know, who would have thunk it, right? It's not just the mansplaining bands. You're able to show me stuff as well.
Yes.
But the perfect blend of power metal and black metal combined.
Yeah.
It is the band Brimmer with the title track off their latest album from last year, Voices in the Sky. An album that, if you would have checked out my top 10 albums of 2022, whether I did the original list or the updated list from back on my birthday, you'll know that it has been in my top 10 every time and actually moved up. And if I was to do it again a month later, it'd be up even further again. But what is your thoughts on Voices in the Sky?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I knew of Brimmer before you. I've been a long-time fan of theirs. They're just such a good mix of, like you said, kind of the black metal, the kind of power symphonic almost metal with a lot of folk elements thrown into, kind of a good mix of clean and harsh vocals. It's just a mix of everything you could possibly want. And this album's no exception. I will say it took me a little bit longer to appreciate this album just because I think back when I first heard it, there was so much good music at the time that it just somehow fell to the side a little bit. But I've definitely come to love it so much more since then, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And although it hit me initially, like right away, it's like I knew this was going to be at least top 20, if not higher. And I might even argue it's like top 5 of last year and is becoming one of my favorites in the black metal / power metal / folk symphonic elements.
Yes.
Like, even though they wouldn't have fit together, a Brimmer Falconer tour would have been so cool to see because they both combine those kind of elements, but they're just different enough where people wouldn't get bored.
Yeah, that'd be a nice mix.
Yeah, even though Falconer, of course, is no more, just like in the
Sadly.
song. And hopefully Brimmer will not soon be no more.
Oh,
I want them to be able to keep going. I need more Brimmer. Yes. I want them to be announced at Prague Power next year.
Not that we're going.
Not that we're going, and not necessarily that they wouldn't have to bow out for undisclosed circumstances, but I just want them to come to America.
Well, and if they made it, maybe they'd be able to do a tour as well. Give us some hope.
See, that's why I wanted them for Prague Power, because instead of us driving 16 and a half hours, we might drive 25 minutes and be able to see them.
Exactly.
And Minnesota, with this style of music, that'd be a good show.
It would be.
So that's our musical roulette for this week. Again, this is my favorite part of the show because you have no idea what's going to be coming up next.
No.
And especially this week, I had no idea what we were going to be checking out.
Yeah. So up next, as we kind of alluded to earlier, we're going to be having some Halloween content on every episode, whether it be a top 10 list or just kind of a discussion of some of our favorites of certain things. And this week, we are going to combine our love of Halloween and horror with our love of wrestling. And we are going to be discussing some of our favorite wrestling matches and moments that are perfect for Halloween watching.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun because I definitely know it's true of you and it's true of me. We both have a shared love of early day Undertaker before he became the American Badass, and of course his right-leaning stuff that we learned about later. But we go back, like 25, 30, 35 years ago now.
Yes.
And really enjoy what he did in the early days of his WWF career.
Yeah.
Just after his WCW run as Mean Mark Calloway.
Yes.
Yes, never forget the Ginger Man himself. But you really wanted to do this one because, it's great because with wrestling, it can be campy, it can try to be scary.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got a little bit of everything. It's that great theatrical feel behind it. Mm-hmm. So we decided to do things a little bit different this time around. We didn't really do a top 10.
Yeah.
We just want to go over our favorite moments.
Yeah, we kind of started with a top 10, but we're going to have so many kind of overlapping each other that we figured better just to kind of have a looser discussion around it. So I'll get us kicked off.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm just going to start with my favorite. And it's kind of a couple different matches and moments and stuff because it is. It's the whole Undertaker versus Yokozuna feud. We'll go with feud. So back prior to the 94 Royal Rumble, Yokozuna, who was being managed by Jim Cornette at the time, I remember he had signed up a contract for Yokozuna to fight the Undertaker, but somehow that pallbearer, the sneaky guy who represented the Undertaker, found a loophole and was able to turn that match into a casket match. And I believe this was the first casket match, or actually there might have been one before this, but I don't think it actually ended with the casket closing it and then like a pinfall instead or something like that. But from the beginning, the fear fear you could see on Yokozuna, he played it off so well. And like I was like probably 12-ish at that time, like seeing it on him, he just built the tension so well, and it made you legitimately scared for him because he was terrified of the Undertaker, terrified of being like enclosed in this casket. And then as they kind of built upward the match, I remember they would do scenes where the Undertaker was building this extra large casket because if you're not familiar with Yokozuna, he was kind of made out to be like a sumo wrestler type character, and so he was a rather large guy. And the fear on him was just constantly building. So then they finally had their first casket match at the 94 Royal Rumble. It didn't end how we thought it was going to. I mean, we are kind of all, I should say, I was pretty convinced that the Undertaker was going to win, but Yokozuna got a little bit help from people. So Brush, Diesel, Adam Bomb, Jeff Jarrett, I think the Head Shrinkers as well. They all came out and helped help Yokozuna get the Undertaker into the casket. So then, so obviously Yokozuna won, but then as they're pushing the casket away, all of a sudden, the lights go off, and on the Titantron, which is big screen if you're not familiar with it, comes up a video of the Undertaker in his casket, and he starts talking about how he will not rest in peace, and basically that he's coming back and stuff. And then on the Titantron, it shows up this image of the Undertaker, almost kind of like in lightning form, and it starts rising up, and like this, at the time I thought it was the real Undertaker, but obviously it was just like a fake Undertaker emerged from the top of the Titantron. It was like the coolest thing you could ever see. So that was that match, and then they had one other match later on that year at the Survivor Series
when he came back.
Yes, so he was out for a while, and we'll touch a little bit on while he was out in another moment later. But when he came back, so they had another match, and Chuck Norris was a special enforcer, if you remember that.
Oh yes. Survivor Series 94.
Yes. It was a fun match. I remember Chuck had like a standoff with Ping Pong Bundy, and Jeff Jarrett tried to get involved again. I think Chuck Norris like knocked him out too and stuff.
With a roundhouse kick.
Yes. But eventually the Undertaker did come out victorious on this fight. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah. Yokozuna finally went the casket.
Yes.
An oversized casket as well too.
Yes.
But no, I think it's one of my favorite feuds in early WWF. Of course, I was scared crapless by The Undertaker. Like, every time I was on there, that was some real fear-inducing that had no jump scares whatsoever. It was just The Undertaker being this ominous presence that just felt like he could take to the grave at any time. And when you have someone like The Undertaker battling someone like Yokozuna, who was just, like, scared just as much as I was of him and doing everything that he could to defeat him, you know, it just, especially for someone of my age as a very little kid back in 94, and I was a kindergartner in 94, that whole feud just worked perfectly for me because it was the right amount of fear for a little bit.
Absolutely. So what's up on your list?
Well, I'm going to be talking about one that happened roughly around the same time, although 27 years ago.
Yes.
Much campier. It is the feud with Hulk Hogan versus the Dungeon of Doom in WCW.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Sullivan, of course, was in charge of that, but it also had the Yeti. It had, he was Earthquake in WWF, but he was the Shark in WCW. Kamala was in the group as well, too. But, yes, I actually did hit my stomach for a fact. But the whole feud would just had, like, all these different vignettes and different segments that just was, like, dark and spooky. It was the Diet Coke of The Undertaker at the time. It was, like, it was meant to be scary, but it just wasn't scary enough. It just came off really, really campy. But it all led to this pay-per-view match at Uncensored 27 years, so that would be 96? Yeah, Uncensored 96. It was the Doomsday Cage match, which was 3 levels of cages on top of each other. And it was Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage.
Nice.
Posthumously star of WrestleQuest. Taking on 3 different levels of people here with Lex Luger, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and the Dungeon of Doom. Now, the whole point of this was you had to beat the first team on the first level, you had to defeat the second team on the second level, and you had to defeat the third team on the third level.
Oh, that's great.
And it was all meant to be like all these different like horror aspects and everything, and it got more and more scary as you got to the top, especially when you get to the third level on top of cages, and you had the Dungeon of Doom up there. there, and just like
Yeah.
seeing them try to be all scary and stuff. Like as a little kid in '96, yeah, I was a little bit scared of all that stuff that was going on as well too. But looking
Yeah.
back, it's just so campy. And even though I'm not a fan of Hulk Hogan over the years, and he has me blocked on now called X, which makes me quite happy. Yeah, just seeing what was at the time my two favorite wrestlers, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, battling evil, battling the darkness, battling horror to come out on top. And they did, of course, because as we learned over the years, Hulk Hogan always made sure to not lose.
Yes.
So I should have saw that one coming a mile away. But it was just a great little horror feud that was going on that involved voodoo, that involved spells, that involved all this different horror campiness. It was a B horror grindhouse for wrestling. And I know you're not familiar with it, but I think you need to check it out just for the giggles.
Yeah, no, I don't remember seeing it anyways back in the day, but I know you've talked about it, and it sounds like a winner.
So what about you? What's next?
So for me, it is The Undertaker versus Mankind's Buried Alive match. And obviously they had quite the feud in a lot of matches, and the infamous cage match as well. But for me, it was the 96 In Your House cage match. So prior to this, Paul Bearer had betrayed The Undertaker, because at SummerSlam, he was in a match, and The Undertaker was going over to Paul Bearer to, if you're not familiar with The Undertaker, he got his power from the urn that Paul Bearer carried around.
Let us have our fun.
Exactly. You like movies? It's just like this.
Exactly.
He went to get some of his power, and Paul Bearer turned on him and held Mankind instead. So that kind of set this all up. But it was, like I said, a buried alive match, and it wasn't like some of the fake ones they've had since this. It was like a full-on pile of deep dirt that they had to put the other person in and cover them completely with dirt in order to win this match. And they even had a headstone with both of them on it, and it was such a creepy setup to begin with. A lot of the fighting took place like right around the hole, I guess. I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but the hole.
The gravesite.
Yeah, the gravesite. Just like beating each other with the shovels, just kind of knocking each other around in the hole too as well. And of course, the entire time, Mankind is like doing his squeals, which makes it all the crazier because he just seemed like completely, out of his mind. Exactly. Eventually The Undertaker won. However, some shenanigans happened after that, because Goldust, Triple H, the Executioner, they all came out.
Which is Repo Man, by the way.
Yes, yeah. They all came out and actually then ended up burying The Undertaker. But then, wait, there's more. The lights go off again, and there's a lightning flash, and all of a sudden, the hand of The Undertaker comes out through the dirt. He's coming back for more.
And of course, if you haven't gathered, I was a youngin' during this whole early 90s going into the 2000s. Apologies for that, folks. We had some screaming children outside our door. But yes, this was the scariest match I ever saw as a kid. And I thought the whole thing was completely and utterly real. When I was a kindergartner in 94, I thought that casket match was the scariest thing I ever saw. Just wait a couple years. And then seeing it buried alive, where I really thought one of them was going to die.
Yeah. Well, and I was middle school age at this time, so I knew that wrestling wasn't real, per se. Like, I knew it was predetermined. But, like, still, when you're putting somebody in a pile of dirt and covering them with this and stuff, it's hard not to feel like it's real. So, like, my, like, still slightly young, impressionable mind was like, oh my god, they're gonna die.
Yeah, and you don't want to be all Wizard of Oz and looking behind the curtain and seeing how it was all made. You want to escape into it, which is the point of the joke I was making earlier about let us have our fun.
Yes.
It's happening in front of us. It is theater. It is ballet. It is with sweaty men, meat slapping meat. I don't care. It's enjoyable. To me, it's live action superheroes when I was a little kid. That's how I looked at it, and it was fun for me.
Absolutely.
Whereas this match was the scariest thing I ever saw in my life. I thought for sure Mankind was going to be buried alive.
Yeah.
And no, it was that swerve and the Undertaker and the lightning struck.
Well, Mankind was first.
No, yes, he was.
Yeah.
But then the Undertaker and the lightning struck and the hand came out. And of course, that reminded me so much of Addams Family Values at the very end when the hand comes out of the grave and grabs the little kid that has a crush on Wednesday, and he just starts screaming, and she just has this giant smile on her face as it happens as the movie fades to black. But yeah, that was a great horror Halloween moment, arguably the most underrated of all the Undertaker stuff, because everyone talks about Undertaker and Mick Foley, Hell in a Cell.
Oh, for sure.
No one talks about Buried Alive. No one.
Yeah, and I would say the Yokozuna ones are pretty underrated.
In time, they absolutely have become.
But what's up next for you?
Oh, of course, I have to talk about WCW once again, because when it comes to all of the campy horror stuff that I love, not of the current age, but back in the WCW days, it is the Chamber of Horrors match from Halloween Havoc 1991. And yes, this entire match is just absolutely bonkers if you don't know. If you're not a wrestling fan, if you don't know old school WCW, just listen to what this match is. Sting El Gigante, which of course is Giant Gonzalez of WWF fame, with that feud with The Undertaker, where Giant Gonzalez beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania 9 using chloroform.
Yep.
But Sting, El Gigante, the Steiner brothers, Rick Scott Steiner, well before Steiner math, versus Abdullah the Butcher, the Diamond Stud, which of course is Razor Ramon, Cactus Jack, which of course is Mick Foley, and one of our collective favorite wrestlers, Big Van Vader.
Yes.
Now, this is known as the Chamber of Horrors match, where they had this very unique style cage, where it was like a steel cage, but then the very top part was slanted, and there was a big hole in the center. There's a big hole in the center because that's where the electric chair came through and dropped down into the middle of the ring. And there was a power supply connected to the cage. Now, what was going on here was there was a lot of different weapons that was going on there. Chairs, tables, baseball bats, all these different kinds of stuff. But the whole point of the match was you had to get a member of the opposing team into the electric chair and flip the switch to electrocute them to death. Old school WCW, folks.
Oh, yes.
So, between very, very bad wrestling from wrestlers who are just big and opposing and can't actually wrestle, like Abdul the Butcher, that's why he did so much death match stuff, especially with a fork.
Yes.
El Gigante, who can't wrestle, he's just huge. And so many other things. Basically what happened was Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, was hanging around by the switch waiting for Rick Steiner to be electrocuted.
Yes.
Now, through some role reversal, everything got switched around, Cactus Jack wasn't looking, and Abdullah the Butcher got put into the electric chair. And then all of a sudden he just heard someone landed in the chair, so flipped the switch, and Abdullah the Butcher was electrocuted to death. Ending the match. Now, of course, he didn't really die. In fact, Abdullah the Butcher, as of recording this, knock on wood, is still alive.
Yes, yes.
But they had to stretcher him out. He fell out of the stretcher a couple times and then just ended up walking into the back through the entranceway, ending one of the worst matches in early WCW history. The whole thing was just freaking bananas from start to finish, and if you just love things falling apart with a horror aesthetic, I implore you to look this up on YouTube, or if you have Peacock, go on the WWE Network and look up this match, because it is well worth the investment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I never saw this back day, but you've showed me it since then, and it's a glorious mess. It's a debacle, but it's so enjoyable.
And speaking of potential debacles, what do you got next for this?
Yeah, so up next, I have, it's not a match, well, it was leading to a match, but a moment, shall we say, between The Undertaker, again, and The Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, yes, and I got some stuff to add to this one as well.
Yeah, so in the lead up to a match they were going to have, I believe it was on one of the Saturday morning shows,
WWF Superstars.
Most likely, yeah. So Paul Bearer was having a little skit in his mock funeral parlor, and the Ultimate Warrior went back there to talk to him. Well, while they were talking back there, the Undertaker came in, and they had a bit of a fight, and the Undertaker ended up locking the Ultimate Warrior in a casket. At that point, all the referees and the back officials and stuff like that came to try to get him out because they're on commentary. Let's see, at the time it was McMahon, it was Roddy Piper, and Savage. They were all making such a point that it was an airtight coffin and he wasn't going to be able to breathe in there and they needed to get him out, and they were playing this up that he was stuck in there and he was a second away from dying. And so all the officials are out there trying to pry it open with pry bars, or iron bars, crowbar, thank you. They have nails and hammers. They're trying to make holes in it. They're just trying everything they can, and finally, after a couple minutes struggle, they finally get it open. They find the Ultimate Warrior passed out. The top of the coffin is tore apart, like he was trying to scratch his way out of there. And then they make it seem like he needs CPR, so they start doing the chest compressions and they put the mask on him for air, and finally he wakes up. They made it out like the Ultimate Warrior was dying, and as a child, because this was back in 91, so I was probably 9 years old at that time, I thought for sure the Ultimate Warrior was dead.
Yes, and also in that feud, I don't know if it was before, I don't know if it was after, but I just remember the match so vividly thanks to Coliseum Home Video. When I was a kid, I would constantly rent wrestling tapes, the Coliseum Home Video from my hometown, always $3 a piece at the time. And I don't remember which Coliseum Home Video it was, but I do remember the match so vividly of The Undertaker versus the Ultimate Warrior in a body bag match.
Oh, yeah.
And it scared me so much because, again, I thought whoever was going to be in there, it was going to kill them because they were going to suffocate just like the coffin,
exactly.
the casket. And kind of the same kind of thing. The Undertaker eventually put the Ultimate Warrior in the body bag. But what happened was the Ultimate Warrior got the strength from the moon and the stars and all those cocaine rants that he did while he was doing his early WWF promos.
Yes.
And he started shaking in the body bag and he ripped it apart, and he was just he barely escaped with his life.
Yes.
And that was always one that put the fear of God into me as a little kid, because seeing someone put into a body bag, I thought that meant that they were dead forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole feud, I wish more would have came out of that. I wish that would have been a pay-per-view match. But, that was so much fun to watch as a kid.
Yes.
So for me, coming up next, if you haven't noticed, I'm going with more of the campier stuff, while you're focusing more on the supposedly scarier stuff.
Right.
I have to go with one of the campiest things of all time. Yes! Delete. Yes, it is Broken Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy in the original deletion match, the final deletion. Probably my favorites, although the third deletion match where all the tag teams from TNA that were a part of it might be my favorites of all the deletion matches. Don't count the AEW ones, they're abysmal.
Yeah.
But the original 3 deletion matches are so campy.
They
and
are.
so much fun.
Yes.
So much filled with insider references to wrestling and everything. But the whole idea is that wrestling superstar Matt Hardy started breaking on the inside mentally, and he became this ultimate foam, and inspired by True Blood of all places. But he's kind of like this universal vampire controller of the world and everything. That's how he's able to win matches. And Jeff Hardy wanted no part of that, even though they were brothers and tag team partners for so very, very long, well before they were ever into actual professional wrestling. And they decided to have a complete half-hour-long pre-recorded match known as the Final Deletion, which took place in the backyard of the Matt Hardy's house, known as the Hardy Compound.
Yes.
Filled with a shed with a real professional wrestling ring where he trains, and all these different things that I don't want to spoil. If you look it up yourself, it is up on YouTube. I implore you to watch this match to just see how ridiculous it is. Of all these different flying objects and fireworks and all these mannerisms that are just so ridiculous that is meant to be scary, but it just comes off as so campy at the same time. The first time I ever saw this, I was in my I can't watch wrestling anymore phase.
Yeah.
I watched it and I thought it was the dumbest thing I ever ever saw in my life. Then when we got back into wrestling, we watched it again. I thought it was the greatest thing I ever saw in my life because everything clicked for me.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're not a wrestling fan, you can enjoy this. If you're a wrestling fan, you can enjoy this. Unless you're like a real diehard, I only watched wrestling from the early 80s type wrestling, you'll find something to appreciate about the whole original trilogy of the Deletion trilogy, but easily start with the final Deletion, not just because it's first, but it might...
Yeah, or if you're Jim Cornette.
Yes. I was trying to say Jim Cornette without saying Jim Cornette, but
Yeah,
yes.
makes sense.
No, what's your thoughts on the final Deletion?
Yeah, I remember when you first brought it up to me, and I thought it was just gonna be terrible. Just sounded so stupid. But yeah, I mean, once we got more into wrestling and kind of started appreciating everything going on in wrestling now, and for me, like, I didn't really grow up like the Hardy Brothers at all, so
Well, that was after your time, kind of.
I didn't have that appreciation for them, so I didn't even have that going. But eventually, I came to love it. It's completely off the wall and crazy, but it's enjoyable if kind of let your mind go free.
Yeah, again, it's like a B-horror grindhouse wrestling. Go into it with that mentality, and you'll enjoy it.
Exactly.
Now, do you have some more?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So the next thing I have is another moment involving The Undertaker and Diesel. So back in 96, Diesel was having a title match with Bret Hart at In Your House, and The Undertaker decided to emerge from the wrestling mat, like through a hole, to come after Diesel. This kind of led into a kind of a back and forth thing with them. The night after that, while The Undertaker was out having a match, Diesel in the back room went and destroyed The Undertaker's casket. And then the one that really kind of stood out to me was Paul Bearer, while Diesel was having a match, he rolled out a coffin, and Diesel came out of the ring, opened it up, and Diesel was it. I know. And I mean, so since then, I've heard that it was actually a dummy in there, and like when they did close up, it was actually shot earlier in the day, and it was still himself laying in there. But either way, as a younger teen, preteen, whatever I was at the time, I totally thought like it was like this like Diesel remake of him, and it was like the creepiest thing in the world.
No one talks about the Diesel Undertaker feud at all. And I remember that so vividly as well, Ben. Yeah, I mean, that whole run where, like, Diesel was heavyweight champion.
Yes.
A lot of people, like, looking back, looked at it as one of the worst reigns in WWF history. And there's reasons to accept that, like, Diesel versus Mabel is one of the worst heavyweight matches ever made. I understand that. But when he was facing The Undertaker, yeah, like, it had a lot of legitimate fear behind it.
Yeah.
It had a lot of, it's like, yeah, the practical effects, whether it was like dummy, a mannequin, or Diesel, later known as Kane, who played the fake version of Diesel at one point in time. Whatever the case was, that was a really legitimate creep.
Yeah, well, and especially when you take somebody like Diesel who's so like big and strong and just kind of a tough guy and stuff, and you can kind of portray him as being kind of scared. Like, oh, okay, yeah, this is scary.
Yeah, just like just like Yokozuna as well.
Exactly.
Which also reminds me, the exact opposite. Do you remember the casket match between Undertaker and Goldust?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, with the golden caskets and everything.
Yep.
Goldust is underrated. I don't care what anyone says.
Yes.
This next one I have is not a match. It's not a moment. It's a faction.
Okay.
And it's a faction that, if things are to be believed, is possible that we could see again at one point in the future. With the best theme music in WWF Attitude Era, it is Edge, Christian, and Gangrel. The Brood.
Yes.
The vampires from hell.
Yes.
Always coming out from the stage from an inferno ring of fire. Gangrel with his goblet of blood that he would drink and spit into the crowd. Edge and Christian just looking like the 90s version of the Lost Boys.
Oh, yes. They were so hot on.
And then the Ravages of Age happened.
Yeah. Christian isn't bad still, but Edge,
Those really sunken cheeks.
Yeah.
But, and Gangrel still fanging and banging to this day. If you don't know that reference, the fangin' is to the vampires, and the bangin' is due to him being a director of adult entertainment. But we can't really talk about that here.
No.
But no, just that group, just like they came around at the point where I wasn't scared anymore.
Yes.
But I just thought that they were so cool.
Yes.
I love the music. I love the whole aesthetic.
Absolutely.
I thought they were the coolest team.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed when Gangrel traded Edge and Christian for the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
In the New Brood.
Yes.
Now, here's a lesson for you. If you put new in anything with wrestling,
it's
gonna
good.
fail. The new generation of WWF, the New Brood, the new Rock and Roll Express, the new Midnight Express, all of them fail because they put new on there. It's like the new Coke. There's a reason why it failed. It's not as...
Exactly.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Brood?
Yeah, I loved the Brood. They were just the cool goth boys that I was in love with. Minus Grell. I thought he was cool, but
Hey, come on.
That said, I will share one that I have that going off of this, just for a little quick side shoot. One of the matches I absolutely loved was the Brood versus Mystery.
Oh, yes.
So if you're not familiar with the Ministry, it was Midian, Viscera, and The Undertaker. And during this match, Midian and Viscera kind of led the match, and then the Undertaker finally came out in, and he hung Gangrel off the side of the ropes.
Yes. Although I need to do a little bit of a sidebar when it comes to that as well.
Yes.
Viscera is Mabel after he got transformed by the Ministry of Darkness.
Yes.
And Midian was Phineas Irwin Godwill of the Godwill brothers. Godwin. Yeah, Godwin brothers or cousins or whatever. But I remember so vividly, yes, both. The Undertaker transformed him by grabbing his head, face claw style. From this day on, you will be known as Midian.
Yes.
And then later he became Naked Midian, where he wasn't completely naked, but he started wearing only a G-string in the ring.
Jeez, I missed
and
that.
if you've ever seen his body, you do not want to see that. I'm pretty sure he was a rib.
Yes.
But my next one, going in a completely different direction, because I feel like we're going to end talking about Ministry of Darkness eventually. But this next one is the most recent, I believe, of all the matches here. And it's not even, again, really scary.
Yeah.
But I just love it so very, very much. Between two now current AEW and Ring of Honor talent, between Orange Cassidy and Stokely Hathaway. Now, I forgot what wrestling company this was for, but it was completely shot ahead of time. It wasn't live in front of a crowd. Mm-hmm. They started wrestling in a boiler room, and then they ended up wrestling on top of a parking building. All these different things that were going on to fight each other, and they were supposed to be having like this really campy, creepy atmosphere behind it. Mm-hmm. And of course, great moments where Orange Cassidy accidentally throws Stokely Hathaway's cell phone from the top of the parking garage, and I am so sorry, and then he like tries to kill him. It's so funny. But my absolute favorite moment is when they're going from the elevator from the boiler room up to the ground level. And although it's funny because like they were going up, but they were acting like they were going down in the elevator. And Stokely Hathaway's like, "Welcome to hell." Then Orange Cassidy's just in the corner. "What are you doing?" It's like, "I don't know." Just like one of the most evil, sinister laughs that you just can't help but laugh at.
Yes.
It's an 8-minute match. It's just something that's so stupid, but it works so perfect for both of them because of the way that they control themselves with their characters and who they are in the ring.
Yes.
What did you think of that match?
Yeah, it was hilarious. I mean, they're definitely peculiar characters if you're not familiar with them. So it was hilarious seeing their interactions with us.
So, what do you got?
So up next for me is the early on part of the feud between The Undertaker and Kane. I feel like eventually it just kind of got silly and but early on, so if you're not familiar, Paul Bearer, again, who represents The Undertaker, informed The Undertaker that when The Undertaker was a youngster, he burned his parents' mortuary, which ended up killing his parents and his brother. But his brother didn't die. His brother Kane was still alive and out there and had been living in fear from all of this for so many years. So eventually, Kane came out one time and attacked The Undertaker at Hell in a Cell.
It's gotta be Kane!
Exactly.
It's gotta be Kane!
Exactly. And so Kane, if you're not familiar, like he is this huge guy to like The Undertaker, and at the time he was like had a face covering because he was so burned from the fires as a youngster and just looked like this crazy horror character. So this kind of spawned the feud between them. Kane interfered in a casket match that Undertaker was having with Shawn Michaels at one point and threw the Undertaker in the casket and lit it on fire. fire. They had a WrestleMania match. And then one of the main things I really enjoyed was they had an Inferno match at 98 Unforgiven. So if an Inferno match, sorry, is the ring is surrounded by fire, essentially. In this case, it ended with Kane getting caught on fire. So that's how that whole thing ended. But it was just so crazy. Like, even though at this point I knew wrestling was fake, like, but still kind of believing into that story that these two were brothers and one of them had been burned by the other, and like it was just two supernatural forces going at each other.
Although I will say, as much as I did enjoy that Inferno match, it does end with a wet fart because only Kane's arm it catches on fire.
That is true.
Like, the whole idea of the Inferno match was like they were gonna completely be immolated, like they were just gonna be completely covered in fire. But no, it was just his arm.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as when Moxley didn't have explosions like take him down, and he was still saved by...
Oh yeah, the barbed wire exploding death match.
Yes.
Saved by Eddie Kingston.
Eddie Kingston, yes.
But yeah, I remember that as a kid, and I was definitely in my hardcore phase then. Not the music, but the hardcore wrestling. I was a huge ECW guy by the time that this came around.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see the full fire. I wanted to see one of them actually be on fire.
Oh, for sure.
And when I got the pay-per-view as well, I actually watched it live, and then when I just saw his arm, I just thought that was so lame.
I get it. I
get it was a technicality, and I also get in real life, it's like fire bad, fire kill. But when I was a hardcore kid, I wanted to see all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it was a great feud, and it lasted pretty much like almost 2 decades. Mm-hmm. That love-hate relationship between The Undertaker and Kane, and it turned out Paul Bearer was the father of both of them, and yeah, it's a weird trip if you try to follow it.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've learned about WWF over the years is if you pay attention to the storyline, it will come back to hurt you because none of it makes sense.
No, not at all.
Although, okay, I'm going to end my part of this with the last one that I had that wasn't crossover. And I started with WCW. I got to end with WCW.
All right.
Current AEW star Sting.
Yes.
He went from being like the surf rock scorpion guy, with clean cut, buzz cut, bleach blonde hair. Mm-hmm. And then a little comic book became a movie known as The Crow. One of your favorite series of comic, movie, all of that stuff.
Yes.
And WCW decided to do just enough not to get sued and have Sting become Crow Sting.
Yes.
That's not the official name. He was always Sting.
Yeah.
It's just he's always known as Crow Sting.
Yeah.
And he had so many battles. He went from battling the NWO, and then he joined the NWO Wolfpack, and oh god, that's a whole thing. But later, near the end of WCW, when everything was going completely bullcrap insane, vampiric wrestler from Mexico, Vampiro, decided to join WCW, and after winning a whole bunch of matches, he decided that he wanted to be the world's biggest goth, or vamp kid, depending on how you look at it.
Yes.
And he decided to start a feud with Sting in a huge attempt to try to make Vampiro a star, which ended up not working.
Well, they actually were tagged for a while first, Brothers in Pain.
Yes.
And it wasn't until after Vince Russo came around and started the New Blood that turned on Sting.
Yes. I left a lot of that out because I wasn't sure how far deep people wanted to go into, but they had so many different kinds of matches. One-on-one matches, different team-up matches, hardcore matches. But the real match that has any weight to any of this in the feud is their graveyard match. Basically, their version of a Buried Alive match.
Yes.
But again, legally distinct enough not to get sued by WWF at the time. Now, they didn't even have the Buried Alive aspect to it. They just fought in a graveyard.
Yes.
And this match is so god-awful in the best way possible. Like, if you love watching bad wrestling, this match is synonymous with bad wrestling. It's not Victory Road 2011 of Sting versus Jeff Hardy, but this is not too far away from that. Yeah, it's basically just like a little street fight, and then one of them uses one of the gravestones to win the match.
Yes.
And it's just flabbergasting that they thought that this would go over and make Vampiro a star. You, not watching WCW that time, but going back and watch later through the WWE Network, what is your thoughts on the Graveyard match?
I have a love-hate relationship with it. I mean, it is a bit of a fumbling mess. They're just kind of walking around the graveyard, kind of hitting each other with a shovel here and there. That's just kind of an awkward ending. But at the same time, I love both characters so much, and I love the setting and stuff too. So it's a love him.
Theme music! Where's my theme music? People aren't gonna know who I am unless they hear my theme music.
Do AC/DC. Going off of this though, I have a couple matches from Sting Vampiro that I loved as well. So they had the first blood match, in which a ton of blood fell on Sting at the end, and then they Vampiro's friends from the New Blood came out and hung Sting in the center of the ring. So that was a creepy kind of ending.
Yeah, there's a lot of hanging in wrestling in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah. And then also the Inferno match was great. This at the end they were on top of the Titantron fighting. Sting got set on fire and then jumped off the Titantron. Granted, it was a stunt devil. We have learned since, but yeah, you thought it was Sting at the time.
Wait, if that's not real, does that mean when Hulk Hogan pushed the Giant off of that parking garage and then like 5 minutes later the Giant just walked through?
No, that was
oh, okay.
Yeah. And then let's not forget that Kiss Demon kind of came out of all this as well.
The greatest of all WCW wrestlers, the Kiss Demon.
Exactly.
It's exactly what you think it is if you don't know anything about this. The band Kiss signed off to create a wrestler in WCW, and they created the Kiss Demon, whose theme was God of Thunder.
Yes, of course. Did you have any others on your end? I
well,
do have
since
one.
you brought up covering blood all over people, this is not a good match. This is a terrible match that we just got done watching and talked about last week or the week before show. I'm gonna bring it up again. The Texas Chainsaw death match between Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy.
Yes.
Yeah, if you missed out on that show, basically, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the game, is available now on all your favorite modern consoles.
Yes.
But besides that, AEW bought the rights to use that name to create a hardcore horror match in AEW, which is going down as one of my least favorite matches in AEW, although one of my favorite to laugh at, where they use buckets of blood, not real blood. Jeff Jarrett's wife, Karen Jarrett, who left professional wrestler and Olympic superstar Kurt Angle for Jeff Jarrett, just was screaming the whole time, "You're gonna die! You're gonna die!" And sorry about that. Lost my train of thought here.
It was a hot mess, is what we're getting at.
It was a hot mess, and just, and then, of course, Leatherface came out and chased Karen Jarrett away.
And she casually walked away.
And it wasn't even Leatherface, as it was a short, skinny guy with a chainsaw, not a tall, fat guy like Leatherface is supposed to be.
Exactly.
For just behind the scenes here, when I did the "You're Gonna Die" part, I accidentally spit on the Metal Faerie, and I apologize.
Okay, I'll get over it eventually. So I got a few more things on my end.
Okay.
So up next is Undertaker versus Undertaker.
Oh, yes.
So this was kind of in between the two Yokozuna matches. Undertaker was out for a while, and while he was out, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, introduced a fake Undertaker. They ended up having a match at I can't remember where it was at, but basically it was the fake Undertaker, who, if you knew the way he dressed at the time, he had the kind of the gray boot, the gray kind of like accessory type things.
His best look.
Yeah, his second best. And then the official Undertaker had evolved to purple point. So it was purple versus gray, and it was so creepy, because like, I mean, if you're a youngster, you're thinking, what happened? There are two Undertakers actually fighting each other. So that was fun.
Whoa. You missed out on the best part of that whole thing.
Did I?
Yes. Now, for a very long time, when The Undertaker went missing because of being put in the casket and basically like ascending or whatever that was, Liam Neeson decided that he had to take on the case of where is the Undertaker?
Yes.
So there was several vignettes over the weeks and months of where is the Undertaker, and in the Naked Gun style, Leslie Nielsen was trying to find the Undertaker, and all these horrible shenanigans started happening. He started going all over America trying to find him, and in some the fake non-American places. And then finally he found him at SummerSlam 94, although he just saw him on the screen. He didn't actually find him. But as someone who grew up with Leslie Nielsen movies, and especially the Nagon series, that was my favorite part of that.
Yes. Another thing that I absolutely loved. So at one point, Jake Snake was in the ring, and Macho Man, I believe was Vince McMahon. I can't remember who else was on commentary. Probably Piper. And he called out Macho Man and made him come into the ring.
I think that was Ventura, actually.
I don't think it was Ventura.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Anyways, if you're not familiar with Jake the Snake, he obviously used real snakes in a lot of his matches, and they kind of got into a bit of a feud, and he unleashed the Cobra Snake, the King Cobra, and it latched on to Macho Man's arm. They couldn't get it to let go. Now, if that's not horror, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's not a work.
No.
That was a shoot.
Yeah.
That was real. The snake would not let go.
Yes. And of course they bring out Stretcher. Finally they get it off. They bring out the Stretcher. Miss Elizabeth comes running out, of course.
Miss Elizabeth.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid, and I didn't know if it was, well, I thought it was real, and then it turned out to actually be real once I learned more about it later in life, and just, that's snakes. Not a fan. I'm like Indiana Jones. I don't like snakes.
Yes. And then I just have a couple quick honorable mentions. So in the lead up to the Undertaker and the Ultimate Warrior fighting, Jake Snake was helping the Ultimate Warrior kind of prep for this match. And so he lured him into this room and locked him in there, and it was filled with snakes. So eventually he gets to the door, he lets him out, he kind of crawls out, only to find the Undertaker standing there because Jake the Snake had been working with the Undertaker all along. And then another one, also the Ultimate Warrior, Papa Shango, he had put a spell on the Ultimate Warrior at one point, and he ended up throwing up like all over the place.
Oh, yeah, Papa Shango. He was one of my favorites growing up, but he was barely on.
Yeah.
And then he became Kama. Then he became the Godfather. Then he became the Good Father when Right to Censor came around. Then he went back to being the Godfather. And then occasionally showing up in the Royal Rumble with his blank train, because I don't want this to be taken off of YouTube. Would just like slowly get into the ring, get thrown over the top rope, and then just slowly went back into the entranceway again.
He has range.
Now, we have to talk about probably the most quote-unquote scary storyline in wrestling. It, of course, is The Undertaker when he went full-on demonic. That is, of course, the Ministry of Darkness.
Ooh.
Now, there is so much that goes into this. Basically, The Undertaker started to make his own little underground acolytes and messiahs for him. Like, he would take people that had nothing to do with The Undertaker at the time and possess them to start working for him. I mentioned that with Phineas Irwin Godwin and Viscera and the acolytes Farouk and Bradshaw. And as things went along, you eventually learn that there's a higher power bigger than The Undertaker. But we're not going to get to that point yet. Going to save that for the very end because that's the most scary, shocking thing of all.
Okay.
But all of this kind of had to do with Stone Cold Steve Austin, where The Undertaker and Stone Cold were having this big, gigantic feud all this time, leading to so many things. And then Vince McMahon got involved somehow.
What?
Yeah.
Vince wouldn't do that.
Well, you wouldn't think so, but he was kind of thrown in.
Oh, okay.
And so was his daughter, Stephanie McMahon.
What?
Yes. She started becoming on TV, and I remember she was going to marry Test, and then she ended up getting drugged and then married to Triple H through a drive-through in Las Vegas wedding chapel.
Spoiler alert.
Then they ended up getting married in real life. Who would have thunk it?
Right?
But no, this was on in her early days, and The Undertaker really wanted to scare Vince McMahon. So he decided to kidnap Stephanie McMahon, and on the next Raw, he was gonna sacrifice her to the Dark Lord. Yeah, let us enjoy this. Let us enjoy this. So who comes to save the day while Stephanie is hung crucifixion style onto the Undertaker logo?
Yes.
None other than Stone Cold Steve Austin, the one that he constantly feuds with Vince McMahon. He comes to save the day, and he knocks out all of the Ministry of Darkness. He saves Stephanie. He does all of this stuff.
Yes.
And of course, that leads to the Undertaker versus Stone Cold ending the feud. Before we get into who that higher power was, what did you think of the whole Ministry of Darkness?
So this was later in the 90s, and this was not my favorite era of The Undertaker, I'll be honest.
But it's the most evil.
But it wasn't scary to me anymore at this point. Like, I found earlier day Undertaker way more scary.
In retrospect, I do as well.
Yes. Granted, it was entertaining. It was very definitely watching.
Well, of course, before the match happens, at one point in Raw, The Undertaker says that he's going to announce who the higher power is, and he wants Stone Cold to see it. So he has the whole Ministry of Darkness there, The Undertaker's there, Stone Cold is standing in front of the ring, and the higher power is draped in a robe. Then all of a sudden, pulls down the hood of his robe, and of course you hear the infamous words, "It's me, Austin! It was me all along, Austin!" Yes, it was Vince McMahon controlling The Undertaker in the Ministry of Darkness all along.
Yes.
Just like Agatha, it was Vince all along. Capping off one of the worst endings to a feud in the WWF Attitude Era.
Yes. I mean, but at the same time, Vince truly is an evil man, so it kind of makes sense.
It does make sense, but you didn't want it to be Vince.
Yes.
You wanted it to be someone that was more aesthetically evil than The Undertaker, not someone who just is evil in real life like Vince McMahon.
Exactly.
So I think that's a good place to end our scary Halloween campy horror moments and matches and groups in professional wrestling.
Yes.
If you are a professional wrestling fan, why don't you tell us some of your favorite scary moments?
Yeah.
It can be anything from the horror aspects to Sid viciously breaking his leg going off the top rope.
Yep.
You think wrestling's fake? Just watch Sid Vicious breaks leg,
Oof,
and
yes.
that will change your mind on if wrestling's real or not.
No kidding.
Or if you want to do a 2022, 2023 version of that, look up Darius Martin breaking his leg. Yeah, that's some scary stuff as well. But yeah, let us know your favorite stuff down below in the comments. So we just got done talking about our scary Halloween camp horror kind of stuff, and now it's time to talk about some more recent stuff. It is AEW All Out, which, in all transparency, up until about 15 or 20 minutes before the show, we were discussing whether we wanted to actually get it, or if we just wanted to replace this segment with why we weren't gonna be getting the pay-per-view. Because, for one, there was too much wrestling that was going on. Between All In, which was like 5-6 hours, then you have Dynamite, which is 2 hours, then you have Rampage, which is an hour, and then you have Collision, which is another 2 hours, and then All Out, it's being another 5 to 6 hours. That's entirely too much wrestling from one company in a span of a week.
And don't forget the media scrums.
Which, as we learned last year, could be the highlights of the entire weekend.
Yes.
Although, soon we'll be talking about why that might not be the case anymore.
Yes.
But also, too, the card was so substandard on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like, AEW, especially in the beginning, had such notoriety for putting on so many great matches that you weren't going to see anywhere else. They weren't contrived. They felt like matches where anything could actually happen and anyone could win. And with All Out, it just felt like a complete and utter afterthought. Being so that the men's lowest ranked title, the international title, was the main event of All Out. And as we've learned from the media scrum, as watched it, falling asleep during it,
Yes.
they are going to continue the tradition of having All In London next year, and then All Out in Chicago the next end.
It's ridiculous.
It's too much.
Well, and not only that, that's $100 you have to shell out to watch it in 1 week. And especially with a card like it was last night, it's not worth it. It wasn't a pay-per-view level lineup.
No, at best, it was like TV.
Yes.
It was full of a bunch of TV main events.
Yes.
And would you say you regret watching last night?
I mean, yes and no. I was going into it hoping that something big might happen, especially with news we're going to talk about pretty soon here. But in hindsight, it was TV level. It was TV level, so it was not worth it.
No. Although I will say, hashtag for the content.
Yes.
Now, before we get into it, there's a notable face from Chicago that did not show up in All Out. A lot of people might have thought that he would show up for a hometown show.
Yeah.
And there was no reason to think he wouldn't, because, he's kind of heralded as one of the biggest names in AEW, at least at one point in time. Well, there was an altercation, if you listened last very show, where he got into a real fight with Jack Perry, son of TV's Luke Perry. And after throwing some punches, a chokehold, and actually lunging at billionaire Tony Khan, there was a third-party investigation that took place. And after all of that, not seeing the fights and altercations and everything that's happened over the past year and change, not getting lunged at by this particular person, but after a third-party investigation unanimously told Tony Khan to do this very action, Phil Brooks, also known as CM Punk or Chick Magnet Punk, depending on how you want to pronounce it, is terminated from All Elite Wrestling as of Saturday after.
Yes. And to follow up, Tony Khan did say that it ultimately was his decision decision in the end. I mean, as CEO of the company, his final call. He also claimed that he, for the first time in his life, at any wrestling match or wrestling event he'd ever been at, cheered for his around CM Punk.
Well, yeah, when you get lunged at by someone who lives the straight edge lifestyle,
right?
which I've talked about before, someone who's maniacal like that and sober is much scarier than someone who's like that and on some kind of addiction.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they know exactly what they're doing.
Oof, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, all of this happened the day before the Chicago pay-per-view, and of course CM Punk's from Chicago. So you would have thought, hey, Colt Cabana's going to be on All Out, but of course that did not happen.
Sadly, no.
But here is what we got in 13 quote-unquote matches.
So first up, they had the over-budget charity battle royal on the pre-show. So it's kind of just like a lot of the squad, essentially.
B squad. It was all the jobbers.
Well, jobbers and some non-jobbers as well.
Well, you got to make it look legitimate by having some non-jobbers in there.
And the whole deal was whoever won was going to be able to pick a charity of their choosing, and they were going to receive, I believe it was $5,000.
Yes.
And Hangman Adam Page won, which was my prediction.
The last one who was in the Battle Royal as well, too. Like, he was the last one to come down. This match, like, all Battle Royals are basically jobber Battle Royals. Royal Rumble, Battle Royal, they all are.
Sadly.
But they sprinkle in legitimate ones to make it feel like, they might win, they might win, they might win.
Yeah.
And this match had every single trope that you see in Battle Royals.
Oh, sure.
Hanging off the top rope after being thrown over, a la Shawn Michaels in 95.
And every other Shawn Michaels match.
ever since. Well, it started with Royal Rumble 95, and then it happened there. People saving people from being thrown over the top rope, catching people and then putting them back on the apron just for them to fall off immediately, betrayals, everything that you can imagine in a Battle Royal happened.
Yeah, I love Battle Royals. They're one of my favorite type of matches, because even if it's a lot of jobbers, it's still always just kind of fun and energy-packed and stuff. And in this case, I'm really happy that Hangman won, because I feel like it was a kind of a nod to CM Punk to, like, hey, I'm still here and I'm winning.
If you're not familiar, CM Punk hated Hangman Adam Page.
Yes.
And you actually picked Hangman to win the Battle Royal.
I did.
Although it wasn't really that fair, because we didn't pick on who was going to win until we saw everyone who was a part of the Battle Royal, because A, we didn't know who was in the Battle Royal.
No.
We didn't know this match was even happening. And of course, you just went with pick.
Exactly.
Whereas I decided to venture out and pick Dalton Castle. Because I think he's due for a win.
Yeah, totally.
And I was wrong.
We're wrong.
Of course, he was the one who got caught by his men. They put him back on the apron.
The boys.
And he immediately fell off the apron as soon as he was put back on there.
He is fun, though. Up next, we had the 6-woman tag team match with Sheeta, Willow Nightingale, and Sky Blue versus Athena, Mercedes Martinez, and Diamante.
And a very young 18-year-old Billy Starks.
Yes.
For some reason being Athena, which I'm not really seeing how they're terrible, but regardless.
Yeah.
This really felt thrown together out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it felt like, hey, we only had one women's match, so we gotta have 2 women's matches for All Out.
Absolutely.
And all the AEW women standing in a row. And it was fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sky Blue had to get the pin because she's from the Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
It was a throwaway match.
Yeah. It was fine. It was fine, but it was a very odd mix there, but whatever. Up next, there was the 6-man tag team match for the AEW World Trios Championship. It was the Acclaimed with Billy Gunn and then Dennis Rodman by their side against Jeff Jarrett, Singh, and Jay Lethal.
With Sanjay Dutt and Karen Jarrett as well.
Of course.
Because you got to have people on both sides.
And the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn won this one.
Of course they does. Jeff Jarrett doesn't win matches anymore. Like, I don't understand why I understand why he works behind the scenes. I don't understand why he's in the ring.
Yes.
And why do you have to drag Jay Lethal down with you?
Yeah. Ugh.
But anyways, it was probably one of my least favorite matches.
Yeah.
Because of all the outside interference and Dennis Rodman just thrown in there for whatever reason because it's
so
against
random.
Chicago, even though Dennis Rodman isn't even from Chicago, but you know, the Chicago Bulls thing.
Yeah.
And of course, best friend to Kim Jong-un,
Yes.
who the Acclaim even reference in their rap that they do in the beginning, which I was not expecting whatsoever.
No.
But basically, what happened was Dennis Rodman hit Jeff Jarrett start with the guitar 1, 2, 3. And why? Just who is this for? Who asked for this?
I
and
don't
why?
know. It was definitely a bathroom break match.
And that's sad because this was the last match of the pre-show. This wasn't even the full pay-per-view yet. This was the matches you can get for free on YouTube or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, it's not gonna draw you in.
But then came the real deal, the real pay-per-view.
Yeah, so the pay-per-view kicked off with a tag team match for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship with Better Than You Baby, Adam Cole and MJF, and they defeated the Dark Order, Alec Reynolds and John Silver with Uno by their side.
Yes, and we haven't seen Dark Order in quite some time on TV.
It's been a while, yeah.
Turns out they've been on Ring of Honor this whole time and have become heel, which I don't like.
Yeah.
But regardless of all that, if you couldn't see who was going to win this match from a mile away, you've never watched wrestling. You haven't watched AEW programming.
That is true.
We both predicted that MJF and Adam Cole were going to win this match.
Absolutely.
Although there was some Brokeback Mountain romance, I can't quit you moments going on here, because at one point MJF got injured in the neck area. Then Alex Reynolds came up with a chair and hit him in the neck, taking him out of the match for quite a bit of time. But then all of a sudden you hear, well, not really, but just imagine, what hurts the most, just being so close.
Yes.
MJF comes struggling from the entranceway to get back into the ring and helps win the match with his kangaroo kick, and of course the most deadly finisher this side of the spear, which is a football tackle, the double clothesline. 1, 2, 3, and they retain the titles.
Yes. Up next, we had a singles match for the Ring of Honor World Television Championship with Samoa Joe defeating Shane Taylor by submission.
Now, before we actually get into the match, MJF was hanging out on the entranceway still with his injured neck, but Samoa Joe decided to come out while he was still there.
Yes.
And in what I can only imagine is a throwback to the old NXT days, Samoa Joe pushed MJF out of the way.
Yes.
But MJF wasn't having any of that. He got so mad and so frustrated, he went to the ring, and they started to scuffle at each other. And that lasted almost as long as the match did.
Yeah, it was a quick match.
And I was really disappointed about it, because this was the match I was most looking forward to. I love Shane Taylor and Ring of Honor, but he did show his strength off a lot.
Yeah.
But you knew Samoa Joe was going to win.
Yeah.
Even though you picked Shane Taylor to win this match.
I went on some ledges just to kind of make our predictions a little interesting, and it did not pan out for me.
No, you failed tremendously when it came to this. But yeah, Samoa Joe did his finisher submission.
So up next, we had a singles match for the AEW Championship with Luchasaurus with Christian Cage by his side, defeating Darby Allin with Nick Wayne by his side.
And if you're not following AEW, Christian Cage,
yes,
he is proclaiming himself to be the TNT champion, while Luchasaurus is the one doing all of his matches for him.
Yes.
And I was in the bathroom during most of this time, so you're pretty much gonna have to tell me what happened.
It was fine. Not a whole lot happened, honestly, that I remember. I mean, like, it was a match.
Okay, well, you picked Darby Allin to win.
Yes.
But Luchasaurus won.
Yes.
Which I honestly didn't see coming, even though I picked Luchasaurus.
Yeah.
I thought for sure that Darby Allin was going to win, and then Christian was going to face Darby Allin and all that stuff, legitimately.
Yeah.
But no, that's not the direction they decided to go into.
No.
Instead, I caught the tail end of this. They just started beating the crap out of Darby Allin at the match.
Yeah.
And Nick Wayne was just there crying.
Basically. Up next.
Oh, what a night.
And then we had a singles match with Miro defeating Powerhouse Hobbs.
In what is now being referred to as the meat division.
Yes.
That is the super heavyweight division. Are they really going to call it division?
I sure hope so.
I hope they make a meat division title.
For sure.
Well, I mean, that comes with the territory.
Yes.
But yes, big meat slapping meats as Miro, the former Rusev, or Alexander Rusev in WWE, with Will Hobbs, Powerhouse Hobbs. In just, again, like I said, big meat slapping meat for X amount of time.
Now, at the end of this, there was a bit of a shocker.
Well, no, it was after the match, done.
Sorry, I meant to say at the end of the match. I thought I did. At the end of the match, Miss Lana, well, formerly Lana, came out. CJ Perry.
Hot and flexible, as it said on the screen.
Yes, and hit Powerhouse Hobbs there.
Very weakly.
It then led to a very awkward moment where Miro kind of gave her a look like, why are you here? And ended up getting out of the ring and leaving.
Yes, I looked a little more into this since we haven't been watching Collision.
Yeah.
You know his whole Redeemer character that's going on right now,
Yeah.
right? Well, apparently at some point he renounced God, he renounced his hot wife, he renounced everything in his way of battling. So he was very, very confused on why CJ Perry would show up. And part of it might have been guilt, feeling guilty that she came to help him.
Yeah.
Or it could be the cuck angle in WWE where she ends up with Powerhouse Hobbs and Miro is forced to watch.
Maybe. Who knows?
We don't know what's going to happen there, but
stay tuned.
As of right now, she's not officially signed to AEW, but
thank goodness.
This is not the way to shake up the women's division.
No, please don't sign her.
But speaking of the women's division,
up next we had a match for the AEW TBS Championship with Chris Statlander defeating Ruby Soho with Saraya by her side.
Yes, and we should go into this saying, during the meat on meat match, I made a joke about like, oh, what's gonna happen? Is Miro's wife gonna come out?
Yes, you did.
And then she came out after the match.
Yep.
Same thing happened here, where if you watched All Out, or if you listened to the show last, you'll know that the Outcasts, which is Saraya, Ruby Soho, and Toni Storm, broke apart.
Yes.
But it turns out it was just Toni Storm leaving the Outcasts. And I made a joke like, oh, what's gonna happen? Toni Storm's gonna help Chris Statlander win? And it happened!
It happened.
Of course, the Outcasts are known for using green spray paint to they line their opponents, or they write a giant L on them after a match is done or whatever. Toni Storm and her Gone with the Wind 1930s Hollywood gimmick that she's got going on now, I really don't understand, took the spray paint away from Ruby Soho, which distracted her to get Chris Statlander the win. I wanted this match good.
I know.
But the outside interference just ruined it for me again.
Yeah.
And it feels like Chris Statlander didn't even matter in this match. It was just more about the dissolving of the Outcasts, which is just going to lead to Toni Storm versus Saraya at some point.
That's true.
Or Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné versus Saraya and Ruby Soho.
That could be. So up next we had no disqualification.
A strap match.
Strap match.
Let's just call it a strap match.
Between Bryan Danielson and Ricky Stark, with Bryan Danielson winning.
Yes, and on commentary was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yes.
At 70 years old, looking better than almost any professional wrestler of his era.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm assuming it's clean living or something like that, but yeah, he does not look 70.
Yeah, he even got involved at one point, took a hit, kind of got up and did his thing.
Well, actually, last week, he took a beating from Rick Starks with a strap.
Yes.
But, I'll be honest, we were both kind of checked out during this match.
Yeah.
We weren't really watching, but there was a lot of blood, a lot of welts. After this match, Bryan Danielson had a giant bandage on his head to like try to keep all the blood in. But if you like the old school blood strap matches from like the NWA days, this was the match for you. And had it been someone other than Ricky Starks, I probably would have paid a little more attention.
Probably. Highlight, they did use Final Countdown for Bryan Danielson out again.
Twice.
Yes.
Because he won the match and they also played it at the end. Yes. So I think that cost them about $1 million to use that.
Right about. There you go, Toby. Up next, we had the tag match with the Blackpool Combat Club, Claudio and Wheeler, defeating Eddie Kingston and Shibata.
Again, a little bit behind the curtain here. We were watching this match, but the Metal Faerie and I like to have this thing that always happens with Eddie Kingston.
Yes.
We haven't done this on the air yet. Maybe we will if some of you really want to hear this. But
we'll see.
But it's completely improv where we go back and forth. One of us will be Eddie Kingston, and the other one will be Eddie Kingston's ma. And we just go back and forth about his wrestling career and how disappointed his ma is with him. And
he seems like he has like, and I don't even know if he's from New York. I can't remember where he's from.
Is.
But he just seems like he has that like full-on New York personality, and I can just envision him living with his mom and like kind of the relationship they have, and it's just pretty funny.
Yeah, it might not sound as funny with us describing it, but if we ever do the improv version of that, you'll understand what we're talking about. But so we pretty much did that throughout most of the match,
essentially.
But the right winners won this one with Blackpool Combat Club, and of course your biggest crush in AEW, Wheeler, as well.
We love you. Yes. Up next we had Teshta with Don Callis by his side defeating Kenny Omega
in the longest match of the pay-per-view, which I was not expecting. This had so many false finishes, 2 counts, attempts at betrayal once again. It had everything.
Oh yeah.
And of course the treasure that we don't deserve Don Callis.
Yes, he is so amazing.
But to save everything out of the way, and instead of counting every single pin or submission attempt, Don Callis was attempting to stab Kenny Omega with a screwdriver.
Yes.
He missed and went through the ring mat.
Yes.
And then he grabbed the screwdriver again, gave it to Takeshita, and while Kenny was about to do his finisher known as the One-Winged Angel, he was gonna hit Kenny with the screwdriver. The referee took it away, threw it out of the ring.
Yes.
Through that whole kerfluffle, everyone got confused in the match. And of course, Takeshita found a way to be able to win the match.
Yes.
And putting Kenny Omega out for good? Question mark?
Ooh. Yeah, I was not expecting that. I mean, I kind of always expect Kenny Omega to win a match if he's in it because he's just that good. But it was a good match, though, I would say. I mean, it was definitely one of the better of the night. And maybe
it was my favorite of the night.
Yeah. It was good.
And no, hold on. So before we continue on, you told me after the pay-per-view is done, there's a little more that's going on with Don Callis.
Yeah, so apparently he has a new t-shirt out that's going for some outrageous amount. And according to Don, it is going to have all proceeds going towards buying a, quote, new emotional support animal for Ibushi now that Kenny is out for the count.
Oh, that is just so
I know.
Again, we don't deserve Don Callis.
We don't deserve Don.
And now for probably my least favorite match of the entire night.
Yeah, up next we had the 8-man tag team match with a Bullet Club Gold, which is the worst pairing of people ever. Austin Gunn, Colton Gunn, Jay White, and Juice Robinson.
You mean your main squeeze, Juice Robinson?
Oh boy, we'll get into that. And they defeated FDR, Cash Wheeler, and Dax Harwood, and the Young Buck.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say this is the worst thing that could happen to the Bullet Club is Bullet Club Gold.
Yes.
Bullet Club is one of the greatest, if not the greatest faction in professional wrestling, at least at one point in time.
Yes.
And the caffeine-free Diet Coke version of the Bullet Club, the Bullet Club,
Pepsi.
the Diet Pepsi, a caffeine-free Diet Pepsi version of Bullet Club Gold, featuring Billy Gunn's sons, Austin and Colton, the former leader of the real Bullet Club, Jay White, and dumpster diver Juice Robinson. Who, why don't you just say it now what you think of Juice? Because it's going to be on our minds.
Oh, he's just creeps me out. I don't know.
Good enough for Tony Storm.
Sure.
Well, anyways, basically, the match was just basically nothing.
Yeah.
It was a big old nothing of a match.
Yes.
And the Bullet Club Gold won, which sucks because I want this, because this faction should not exist.
No.
Or at least, if nothing, well, 75% of Bullet Club Gold should not be.
Exactly. Jay White is great.
Although Juice makes an argument because he was in Bullet Club over in New Japan.
I get Juice, even though he is but the Gunn brothers should not be.
Oh, Rod and Todd.
And finally, we had the AEW International Championship match with Jon Moxley defeating Orange Cassidy.
And as I put in the beginning of this is the lowest ranked men's title in AEW.
Yes.
Being the main event.
Yep.
That goes to show you how little effort went into this pay-per-view. It was all put into All In, not for All Out, which I think should have spaced it a little bit better. But what are you gonna do? Anyways, this was a big old bloody brawl as every Moxley match ends up. He just walks out to the ring and he starts... But it was Orange Cassidy that drew first blood in this one.
Yeah, he's the one who did most of this.
Yeah, I think there was only real blood that came out of Moxley, not cutting himself open. But yeah, I wasn't really expecting Moxley to win, even though Orange Cassidy had like 30 wins or something like that. It was some kind of insane thing that ever since he was the first person to have the international title after it was branded, which again, I need to bring up because international title, world title, those are the same thing.
It's all the same thing.
International and world are the same thing. Why doesn't wrestling understand that? Intercontinental too, because it goes into different continents.
Yes.
All but Antarctica, apparently, because I've never seen an Antarctic wrestler. But I digress. It felt like a very it was a good match.
Yeah.
It was a good match.
It was.
Moxley and Orange Cassidy are great wrestlers.
Absolutely.
But at the end, like Orange Cassidy was pretty much like knocked out, lost, and everyone was going, "Thank you, Orange." And that's how it ended. So does that mean Orange Cassidy's taking a break? Are they just thanking him for his run? Don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went into this one thinking Orange Cassidy should win because he hasn't had really like a victory against like a super hardcore guy like Jon Moxley before. So I think that could have really like pushed him into like kind of showing a different side of him. But I definitely got the impression that he kind of needs some time off now, and especially when in the media scrum, Christner was talking about Orange Cassidy a little bit. It just sounded like he's kind of probably maybe not officially injured, but injured enough enough that he needs some time to kind of recover and recoup. And to be fair, I mean, he's been wrestling every single week. He pretty much takes off every single Dynamite, so it's understandable that he needs time to recoup.
Yeah, if you have to do that many title defenses in under a year,
Yeah.
like 30 some, and there's only 50 weeks in a year, that's insane.
It is.
So
It is.
you gotta admire that work ethic, and I really see Orange Cassidy AEW World Champ.
I would.
But overall, 2 matches I would have wanted to see in a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
The rest, just no.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the worst AEW pay-per-view, but there's an argument that
Yeah. I mean, it was fine, but just it wasn't a caliber.
Did you watch All Out? Did you watch All In? Are you one of those crazy people who thought All Out was better than All In?
Are you one of those people who's booing anybody who was against CM Punk?
It was red hair and straight edge. Let us know in the comments down below.
So up next, we got some video game talk. So first of all, I know you ran into a little bit of a snag this week with Wrestlequest.
Yes, I was enjoying WrestleQuest so very, very much. I had like over 20 hours into it. I love the characters. It actually made me start to appreciate turn-based combat a little bit more, like the strategy. I'm not a turn-based guy, but it made me think about things a little bit differently. So I appreciate a little bit of a different challenge when it comes into games.
Yeah.
Then my PS5 updated, WrestleQuest updated, and I lost all of my progress. Now, before you talk crap, it was saved on both of the PS5 and in the cloud. Both of them were deleted, which really, really sucks, and put me in a really sad mood after that. So after that, I just went like, all right, well, I guess I'm just gonna restart Far Cry 6 again. I'll play a New Game Plus and just continue on from there and just see what happens till the next game I get.
Exactly. And that next time came a couple days later.
Yes, on Thursday, started seeing reports that if you have Xbox Game Pass, which we have, and if you pay $35 for a premium upgrade, you could play Starfield at 7 p.m. Thursday night our time.
Yes.
5 days early.
Ooh.
So I believe the game officially comes out tomorrow as we're recording
on
this.
the 6th.
Yes. So knowing this, it got me very excited in wanting to play it. And it's funny because on the show I've mentioned before, it's like, oh, I'm not going to get the premium edition. I've waited this long. What's another 5 days?
Yeah.
But we talked about it.
Yeah.
And we decided, why not?
Well, we waited this long for it and been excited this long for it. And, like, obviously we didn't want to spend, like, $100 on a premium edition for, like, PlayStation. But if we're already getting the base
Well,
game...
it's not on PlayStation. It's an Xbox exclusive.
Oh, sorry, I forget. We wouldn't want to spend that much on the game, period. But since we're already getting the base free and the premium edition, which actually will provide some extra content for us...
Down the road, but yes it will.
It was only $30. $30 isn't that bad to spend on a full-on premium game, essentially.
Yeah. And of course Game Pass helps, and you could also look at that in the contrarian way. It's like, well, you didn't pay $100, you're paying $15 a month to keep playing that game.
Along with a lot of other games too.
As well, so that doesn't really hold weight in water. But
no.
If you're not familiar with Starfield, it's essentially the Elder Scrolls Skyrim or Fallout in space. Mm-hmm. It's an entire universe with 1,000 different planets, and I've already seen so many different types of things. I've seen like a cyberpunk universe, I've seen barren winter wastelands, I've seen Earth-style planets, been to the moon, our real moon. There's so many cool little Easter eggs. And yes, before you ask, there is cheese and there is sweet rolls in the game.
Woo!
So that continues the tradition.
Yes, most important thing.
Now, I've gotten almost 24 hours into the game, if not more now.
Yeah.
What has been your impressions from the little bit that you've seen of me playing Starfield so far?
I think it looks fun. Like, I mean, I think some of the mechanics I would need to get my hands on firsthand to kind of learn stuff, like as far as traveling to different planets and all that kind of stuff, but it seems so like big and so many different things you can do. I mean, just from the couple planets I've seen, they're very diverse, and it's like No Man's Sky, but like good and like Skyrim based stuff.
Whoa. For all intents and purposes, No Man's Sky might actually be a lot better now, since they've put a lot of huge updates and everything.
Yes.
I just haven't gone back and played it yet, even though I have it.
Well, yeah, I mean, my knowledge of it is from the very beginning when you go to a planet and it's like just the ground.
Yes.
But like these are like full on, like at least some of the ones I've seen, like inhabited places with buildings and civilizations and all that stuff. And like I played it myself just for like maybe 5 minutes one day when you ran to the bathroom, and like it's fun. It's fun. Like I can definitely see myself getting into it at some point. So it sounds like a good time.
Now, I know you don't want to play on the TV because, it's like you can get queasy while doing it.
At least not our big TV.
Yeah. Do you see yourself, like, I don't know, maybe getting a used Xbox Series S or finding something that has Game Pass app on it to be able to play it? Like, do you find some way to be able to play this in the future?
I mean, I want to. I guess I haven't really decided which way I want to go. If I get a handheld, I want like an official, not like some third-party weird thing that I don't know how long it's going to last and stuff. Because if I'm spending money on it, I want to be protected in my purchase. So we'll see about that. But at some point, I will play it somehow, some way.
And I really hope you do, because once you get over the learning curve, it just becomes so much fun, and it really does become Fallout or Skyrim in space.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people who didn't get the upgrade and stuff, it's coming out tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Or today, if you're checking this out, since most people will probably hear this on Tuesday.
Yes.
You should check this thing out, because it is a lot of fun. And if you love the Bethesda games, if you love the Bethesda jank with all the bugs and glitches,
yes.
It's not as prominent, but when it's there, it is funny.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot more stable than a lot of the other games that have happened. Microsoft really helped flip the bill on this game to make sure that it runs a lot better than it used to.
Yeah.
And I imagine that there's going to be some big old patch that's going to happen when it's officially released.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to run even better than what I'm currently experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And potential game of the year for me.
Definitely.
Although there's a lot of cool games that's going to be coming out in September and October, which we'll get to as they come. But for right now, I am fully, utterly engaged into Starfield.
Yeah, so before we wrap up our gaming section, there was a little bit of news on the Saints Row Volition front.
Yeah, this breaks my heart. Mm-hmm. As one of the lone defenders of Saints Row 2022, Volition Games and Deep Silver are no more. Mm-hmm. Due to so many things that happened with their higher-up company and deals falling through and stuff like that. Also, the poor critical reception of Saints Row and not selling enough of Saints Row. Both companies are now no more, which is really sad, because they didn't just do the Saints Row games. They did so many other great games, but I'll always know them for Saints Row. Mm-hmm. I love all of the Saints Row games, including 2022.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people had a problem with it story-wise and stuff like that, and I see the issue. For me, I just had so much fun playing it.
Yeah.
They had a nuclear blast radio station, and granted, there was only like 10 songs on there, so but like hearing In Flames Cloud Connected as you have a little flying suit, and I was told that I could fly. It just matched so perfectly together.
Exactly.
The open world was cool to go through. That Southwest, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico area. I thought it was really fun. I mean, you never played it, but you watched me play it. What did you think of Saints Row 2022?
Yeah, I thought it seemed like fun too. I mean, I think, what was it? What were the previous one? 3 and 4? Or...
Yeah, 3 and 4.
At 4 will probably always be my favorite. The just completely off the wall craziness. But it seemed like fun to me. I don't know. I think I'd enjoy it if I actually did play it at some point. So
well, we have it. So
yes.
Whenever you want to. But along with that, you actually love the Saints Row series, at least 3 and 4.
Yes.
And I got you into that, and you were kind of apprehensive a little bit in the beginning, but once you saw the penetrator, you were sold.
It's just such an off-the-wall weapon. It's hilarious.
I just love how you can kill someone with it, but it's so floppy.
Yes.
If you can't figure out what we're talking about by now,
play the game.
Play the game.
Yeah.
But Deep Silver and Volition, you will be missed, because you created some of my favorite games in video game history.
Absolutely. Well, to close the show, we got a little bit of music talk here. You had an interview this week earlier with Dino Cazares from Fear Factory.
Yes, my third time talking to him in like a year and change.
Yeah.
Because we talked about the latest studio Fear Factory, but talked about the remix albums, and this time we talked about another remix album, which instead of fake drums on the album, on Industrialized, there's now real drums on Reindustrialized. We also talked about their upcoming touring with Lacuna Coil and Butcher Babies and a bunch of stuff that's going on there. So this one threw us both for a loop because due to some things, times weren't right.
Yeah.
So he came on later than I thought, and then it ended up being later than all of that. So we were both kind of out of the loop, but I think it added to the charm of the interview.
Yes, you guys came together.
Yeah, we were both kind of lost for words, and we were having fun with each other, like trying to pronounce my last name, Runquist. But
Yes.
you know, there was just a lot of fun stuff that was going on in there. So if you want a non-clickbaity Fear Factory interview, which there's plenty of lately,
Oh, yes.
with the clickbait Fear Factory, I think you should check that out.
Absolutely.
And then I just want to bring it up again because, again, with Suicide Prevention Awareness Month,
Yes.
I did want to bring up again my interview with Vikram Shankar of Silent Skies and Redemption.
Absolutely.
And, of course, Silent Skies Studios, which, if you check out the interview, I didn't realize that he did the music for Evil Dead the Game.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
That is.
And, of course, he's got some other projects that he can't talk about right now, and... But you should check out that interview, and at the very end we talk about mental health stuff.
Yeah.
That's how we first connected in the first place, is that we both really struggle with mental health.
Yeah.
And it was great to be able to get his insights with all that he's able to accomplish with all of the bands and artists that he works with, and of course Silent Sky Studios, and still battling mental health, showing that anyone can be affected.
Absolutely. So I didn't check out a ton of new music this week, but you did turn me on to a new band, new to me anyways, Lord of Shadows.
Yes. Aaron Stainthorpe has been putting his name all over the doom metal scene lately, whether he's doing his spoken word, whether he's doing his cleans or his growls. And he is lending his guest vocals once again. And the original female vocals of Draconian is also a part of this. So they're basically duetting with each other throughout the entire album.
Yeah.
If you haven't gathered by this, Aaron Stainthorpe is the main songwriter of My Dying Bride, and of course Draconian, that is both in the gothic doom territory. So this album is full of gothic doom.
Yes.
As you're not a fan of doom, but you like gothic doom.
Yes.
What did you think of this album?
Yeah, I'm not a straight up doom person at all, but when you add the right gothic tinge to it, it can be right up my alley. I love Draconian. In this case, it just has that perfect dark kind of gothy love letter vibe to it. Their voices together just give it such a dark kind of romantic kind of feel to it. And of course I love her voice from Draconian, and I've never really gotten into My Dying Bride, but
will you now?
yeah, we'll see where we go.
That's not a straight up no.
It's not straight up no, but yeah, they do some really beautiful stuff here, and the lyrics are really deep too, so it's good stuff.
But one more album that we did check out, which officially came out back on Friday, is the brand new album from Eclipse, Megalomanium. And what is your thoughts on this album? Be a little bit later into Eclipse, but still enjoying Eclipse nonetheless.
Yeah, I think we might have mentioned Eclipse on a previous episode. I can't remember in what context, but they're just such a good, just straight up rock band. They're what rock should be right now. They are very radio friendly, even though they're not on radio around here, obviously. But they're just amazing. They're amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember we were talking about looking forward to the album.
Yes.
And because you're with me, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you got to hear the album a little bit early before it came out.
I did.
Yeah. This is probably the most diverse Eclipse album.
Yeah, that's
sometimes they focus a little more on pop, sometimes they focus a little more on hard rock and metal. This had a little bit of everything. It felt there was My Chemical Romance kind of riffs going on in one song. There was some almost real heavy metal moments that were going on, and beautiful ballads in between. Just a little bit of everything. Everything that I love about Eclipse is on this album.
Yes.
And I've seen some people say it's their weakest album. I think you're wrong.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know where it would stand in placement against the others, but I really enjoy it. So
absolutely. And with the most hope that I can possibly give, I hope this ties us over until the next Nordic Union album.
Yes. Oh, I sure hope so.
And I think with that, we're gonna hit the old dusty trail here. This show has gone on much longer than either of us expected. I mean, we really got caught up in the horror wrestling stuff, but it's just fun going back and forth with that with each other. I hope you're enjoying that on our side, or on your side, listening to us talk about it. And of course, if you like the show, didn't like the show, got any ideas for the show, anything, let us know in the comments wherever you're checking this out, be it Spotify, be it YouTube, any place that has comments, or you can hit us up on social media. On Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube. All under the name Heavy Debriefings. Or if you want to just check out everything Heavy Debriefings, go ahead and check out heavydebriefings.weebly.com, because I'm not paying $50,000 a year for the full name. But until next week with more of the Heavy Debriefing Spooktacular. Still need to come up with a better name, although we're probably not going to. I can't wait to see what you have for next week. It's going to be a fun time. But as we venture more into the spooky or spoopy season, as people like to call it nowadays, for the Metal Faerie, this is Josh Ronquist saying, see ya.